Every time I'm doing this, I'm sitting there going, I should have bought glasses like Jane. I should have bought glasses like Jane because my neck is doing this to see.
Yeah, man, I had the worst headache yesterday. Here we go. All right, now I'm going to get my IPVO going. We're going to pause. All right, we're back again. What we're going to be doing today is looking at the region of the head and the throat, both the muscles, and we'll go over the glands at this point because they're going to be in front of some of these muscles and we're going to have to move them out of the way. So we'll identify them before we start moving them around and then get into the muscles. We'll come back to identifying the glands a little bit later in the dissection. This is what the rat looks like without any dissection of the muscles done yet. There is a thin film of tissue called fascia over the muscle. You can see right in here where the fascia has been moved a little bit. I've actually got a border between a couple muscles here. So what we need to do before we go and start trying to identify anything is move this fascia away to take it off the surface of the muscle. Much like taking the skin off, we're just going to pull and then we'll just set aside whatever we pull off. Now, when you're doing this, you kind of want to be watchful of little pink and blue lines. Those are arteries and veins. So as much as possible, try not to disturb them. So I'm going to flip we're going to trade rats here because Mrs. Black already dissected out the throat region of her rat, and I'll show you what it looks like after that's all done and start identifying some of these structures here.
We'll bring this one back.
And then we'll bring this one back when it's all dissected out. So here we go. Flip. Okay, give that a chance to focus. Looks a bit different, doesn't it? First thing you'll notice is there's a whole bunch of little tiny sort of lentil shaped things. They're kind of flat and smooth. These are all lymph nodes. They're part of the lymphatic system. They participate in fighting off infection. And as we were dissecting this, we found a rather large lymph node here, thinking maybe it is either a tumor or there's maybe an infection going on. But you can tell lymph nodes from other structures by the fact that they're sort of flat and smooth on the surface. So I'm going to move that out of the way.
I see some of it just back right here.
Okay. So on the male rat, there's a lymph node right there. Okay, and then also right there. So when you're dissecting, kind of look for these little structures. There's another one off to the side. We have these too in our body. Sometimes when you get sick, they get swollen and tender. That's just your lymph system doing what it's supposed to do, fight off infection. So now we got to start identifying all the glands.
So that big round one is the
lymph node. Oh, I got to get her under the camera there. And then we have another large structure underneath here. Now well, there's actually two things here, is a salivary gland. This is what produces saliva to help begin the digestion of your food as you're chewing things in your mouth. It adds fluid to make it easier to swallow things. So as soon as you start eating, and sometimes even before, you can begin to salivate. I know our dogs, as soon as we bring the food out, it's just rivers of drool. That's saliva being produced by the salivary glands there. This is the mandibular gland, this very large gland here. And then at the top is another gland that is kind of, is there a way
posterior
to
side.
Posterior. So right about up here.
The other one.
Ah, okay. So that's nicely dissected out there. So our mandibular gland is the larger one, and then the sublingual gland kind of sits on top and to the center of that mandibular gland. So this is sublingual, it means under the tongue, and mandibular. Both of these release the saliva directly into the mouth. Off to the side is another gland called the parotid. This is the parotid gland here. That also produces saliva, but it sends saliva up through this duct here, this white line. This is a duct from the parotid gland up into the mouth. So it actually crosses the cheek here. That's the parotid duct.
So when we get a good one here, it looks like this.
Actually get up. And you don't have to separate out the parotid duct, but it's kind of a little tube there sitting on the master. All right, we have the other rat here. Woo! It's a big mandibular gland there.
But when they first come out, a lot of times we look like this. This is where we're going to separate to get the muscles.
Yeah, we have to get, there's actually a little bit of fascia in there between them. Looks like the one on the right side is a little bit bigger than the one on the left. A couple of lymph nodes up here. So mandibular glands, lymph nodes, and one over here. And then we can push them aside. Actually need to do a little bit of separation here of fascia. The forceps work great for this process. Here's my sublingual gland sitting on top of it. There we go. Now you can see the edge of that. Okay. Same thing would be on this side as well. Okay, so mandibular, sublingual. Off to the side, lateral to all of this is the parotid gland. P-A-R-O-T-I-D, parotid. You'll notice that there's some veins underneath there. And there's that parotid duct that brings the saliva from the parotid gland up to the mouth. So once you get those uncovered, then you can push them off to the side. Don't take them out, because we'll want to look at them again when we dissect the oral cavity and find the trachea and the esophagus. We'll come back. But now you can see some muscle underneath here. And this is where we want to go. Still removing some fascia. Just accidentally tore a little bit of that muscle there.
I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be looking for in these muscles.
Okay. So every muscle has a point that it's anchored to. We call that the origin of the muscle. That origin, wherever the muscle is kind of anchored to, isn't going to move when the muscle is contracted. The insertion point is the part of the body that the muscle connects to that is going to move. So each of these muscles we're going to be talking about has an origin and an insertion point. When you are dissecting muscles, one of the things that you want to look for is edges to the muscle. Okay, so there's a nice edge there. And another one over here. So these are separate muscles from the muscle tissue underneath here. That's a different muscle. Muscle fiber direction is also something you want to look out for. Each muscle will have fibers that run in a certain direction, which also would help you determine origin and insertion. These muscle fibers are running at kind of a diagonal here. So we know that this muscle that I'm working on right now is going to be connected down in the region of the sternum. And then also up here in the back of the head. Muscles are also covered by a membrane called the perimysium. Peri means surrounding. Mysium, the MYS part, is referring to the fact that it's on a muscle. So it kind of packages the muscles, makes them discrete from other muscles. It also helps to do a little bit of isolation in terms of the electrical signals that muscles are receiving, so that only that muscle is activated by the nerve and not activating other muscles around it unless those muscles' nerves are talking to the muscle. So now I have these two muscles here. And over on this side, this rat is nice. It doesn't have a whole lot of latex sitting around in this region. Unless you took that all off. No?
I took this one. Okay.
Get some of this fat out here.
I'm not going to be able to show them these lines.
In the muscle?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in this one that I kind of tore a little bit, you can see this fiber sort of sticking out here. And you can see that that fiber runs along the direction of that muscle. Okay. This is the sternomastoid muscle. This is a muscle that helps turn the head right or left, depending on which side is being contracted. Or if both sides are being contracted, it brings the head down. Okay, so if the right sternomastoid muscle is contracted, its origin is on the sternum, sterno, and then its insertion is way back on the mastoid process, which is this kind of bump behind your ear. So when this side contracts, but not the left side, that's going to make the rat turn his head to the right. If the left side is contracted, rat's head will move to the left. If both are contracted at the same time, the rat will look down. All right, so behind here is another muscle, and it is also paired. We already have that one up.
Which one are you doing this guy?
Oh, you want to compare sternomastoids? That would be a good idea. Switch. So here's our other rat. Oh, you got the clitomastoid too?
I haven't got it completely out yet. Yes.
Nice. So there's sternomastoid right there. And then another muscle a little bit posterior and lateral to that is the clitomastoid muscle, which I don't think we're...
Just say it.
Is that same origin insertion for that one as well?
The clavicle.
Clavicle. So the clitomastoid is originating on the clavicle down here, but also inserting way up in the back there by the ear on the mastoid process. You can see they kind of end up looking like they're going to be real close together up there. Now in us, this muscle, or these two muscles, sorry, is one muscle. We call it the sternocleidomastoid. It's the combination of the two. Same function in us as it is in the rat and the cat, if we were doing the cat. And also in or originating from the sternum and the clavicle. So sternomastoid, cleidomastoid. Other side, latex did a number on things over here.
That's exactly what I wanted to show them.
We're going to leave that side be.
That's gonna be common in some of the rats.
Yeah, they cut a hole in the rat's neck and inject blue and red or pink latex so that we can tell the difference between veins and arteries. And sometimes that kind of destroys structures in the neck region there. So it's a little more difficult to figure out what's what.
The hyoid's out.
Oh,
The sternal hyoid
Okay.
and the digastric.
So this band of muscle here is called sternohyoid. Again, originating on the sternum, inserting on a bone in the neck called the hyoid bone. This is the only bone in the body that does not articulate directly with another bone. It's kind of suspended by ligaments and tendons there. Sternohyoid, when it contracts, is going to pull down on my finger on that hyoid bone, which helps the rat swallow.
Here's a real good clear line that you can show them to get the sternal hyoid out.
Nice. Okay. Switch.
Switch.
Wow, look at that digastric is awesome. All right, so here's our sternohyoid here. If I rotate him to the right just a little bit, you can see an edge to that sternohyoid. So I'm just very gently going to put the forceps in there and let the muscle tell me where to go. You shouldn't see any fraying of the muscle. If you have broken the paramecium, that wrapping on the muscle, you'll see little muscle fibers being revealed. So here's my sternohyoid.
See how we frayed it here?
Yep.
Yeah, we can show them that.
Okay. The sternohyoid is actually two bands of muscle. So you can kind of gently press on the center there, and that should kind of reveal where I can get between the two bands. It's not so clear, as I would hope. There we go. So here we have the left band. Sorry. There's the left band of the sternohyoid, and there's the right band of the sternohyoid. Again, inserting on the hyoid bone up here. When this contracts, the origin stays stable, doesn't move. That's the sternum. The insertion on the hyoid is going to pull that hyoid down when those two bands contract. Also, really nicely dissected out here is the digastric muscle, one on each side. You can kind of see the tendon right here also coming up to the hyoid there. This muscle runs from the hyoid actually up onto the mandible.
Digastric.
Yeah. So on the back, kind of on the back of the mandible there, all the way back to the occipital bone. So we're not going to be able to see where that originates from. The occipital bone, if you remember, is in the back of the head. band of digastric, the other band of the digastric. That helps pull that mandible down. So our mandible, our lower mandible right here. So contract that, that's going to help pull the mandible down. Above the digastric is the mylohyoid right here. Is that one we asked them to know?
The myohyoid doesn't come out real nice. It's just kind of like right here. We don't see it. I mean, it's really, that one, no, but you can see it there, but on this one, it's that little band that goes, so horizontal lines. You can look right across in here. You should see some horizontal lines. Oh my goodness.
Sure, on a good day. Let me go between these two.
Yeah, we don't ask them to know that.
Okay. So here you see it is inserting on the mandible, comes down and then splits to go back to the occipital bone. This is your digastric.
Master.
Ha, masseter, big cheek muscle. This is what gives rats their nice little round cheeks. The masseter comes from the word to masticate, which means to chew. Get a little bit more of this fascia off here. And that one originates on the zygomatic arch, which is what forms your cheek ridge there, and then inserts on the maxilla. So up in here. This is the muscle that helps you bite down. So to bite down on something, to masticate, to chew. To open the mouth requires a different set of muscles. Okay, so when we ask for the action of a muscle, this is one thing that happens a lot. Students will say, moves it up and down. It either moves it up or down, or out and then back in, or flexes or extends. It doesn't do both. There's an opposite muscle that will do that. So to bring the mandible up means that the masseter is going to be contracting. To pull the mandible back down means that our digastric would be working. Okay, this is a nice round muscle here. That's the masseter. I think that's it. I think we have it on the other side here too. Oh, you know what? I didn't do the lacrimal gland.
Right.
Do that.
It's still probably still intact. So
Okay. Anybody walking by is going to think we're juggling rats.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at the masseter on this guy. Nice big round muscle right in through here. It's got that parotid duct running across the surface of it. Laterally and closer to the ear is another gland called the lacrimal gland. This is not a salivary gland. This is a gland that produces tears. This is a gland that's going to keep the eyes of the rat nice and moist. That's the lacrimal gland there. To lacrimate means to cry or to tear up. It's the lacrimal gland. Let's see if I have it on the other side. Sorry for the dry hands here, guys. Here's my lacrimal gland. That's it. Okay. All right. Okay. Stop or pause?
Pause for now, I guess.